Hey everyone, let's talk about loneliness and loneliness as it applies to going through narcissistic abuse. Okay, I could stop there and you already know the answer to this one, right? But I'm putting this video together and was outlining this video in a day that I had talked with a pretty large audience about loneliness. Talking about loneliness in and of itself is not my usual wheelhouse, but for me, it's always going to come back to the whole toxic relationship thing. And I realized that this was a conversation worth sharing here too, with people who are actually going through narcissistic relationships. There are so many ways to be lonely in a narcissistic relationship. You may be lonely because you're isolated. You may feel lonely because nobody gets what you're going through and actually thinks maybe even that the narcissistic person in your life is a fine person, and they might even tell you that maybe you're the problem. You may feel lonely because your reality is regularly invalidated. You may feel lonely because you don't know where to turn to talk to about this, because even you aren't sure about what is going on in your relationship and wonder if you're the one who is the problem because you are so confused. You may feel lonely because you don't have a partner, even though there's somebody sitting in your house, and are trying to raise kids largely alone. Like I said, there's someone else in the house who is more than happy, though, to criticize you. Or you may be lonely because you're trying to co-parent with someone who is committed to making it more difficult. You may feel lonely because you don't have a soft place to land in the form of a family of origin. You may feel lonely during the holidays because either you are spending it with a toxic family, or you're having to fight it out with a toxic co-parent, or you just cut off from people and you're spending it alone. You may be lonely when you witness healthy families having vacations together or family dinners and feeling as though you are an outsider or an interloper with your face pressed against the window of life staring in. You may feel lonely because you have an adult narcissistic child and you don't even know where to talk about that, because you still struggle and wonder what your role was in it. You may feel lonely because you feel ashamed. So as you can see, and that's just a few of them, the loneliness of narcissistic abuse takes so many forms: existential, physical isolation, being detached from your reality. But so often when we talk about loneliness, we treat it as a numbers game. People will be told, well, you have a family. You have parents who are alive, or you have siblings, so that means you have support. You're in a relationship or you're married, so that means you have someone around. At the end of the day, loneliness isn't about quantity. Personally, I think it's only about quality. Most survivors of narcissistic relationships would be thriving a lot more, if not completely, if they could get away from the narcissistic folks and only had 2 or 3 good people in their lives. But we make so many assumptions about who is lonely. We rarely stop to think that there are people in the world, the people in the world who are in relationships. They tend to be the loneliest ones of all. We just don't talk about it. We often treat technology like it's a problem. Trust me, folks, while social media is a total shit show, it can't compete with the kind of loneliness we feel in our narcissistic relationships. Scrolling pictures of your friend's fabulous vacation and her fabulous avocado toast doesn't make you lonely. Being invalidated or shamed or gaslighted, that's what does it. The fact that people who are navigating narcissistic relationships are deeply, deeply lonely, that's what's getting missed, and what is a huge public health conversation now about loneliness. The fix that is often floated is, well, how do we get people out there to meet more people? That seems like a good idea, right? If indeed it is isolation, that's what's making someone lonely. If other people are the solution, then the action is to find ways to meet people, right? And this, though, is where we ignite the loneliness of the people who have gone through narcissistic relationships. When we go through narcissistic relationships, one of the first things to go for us is trust. As we meet other people, they represent trust. As we meet other people, they represent threats. Or we might overcorrect with too much discernment or too little discernment. We get confused. We blame ourselves. So other people can become very scary very quickly when we are going through narcissistic relationships and when we're trying to meet more people. Things like joining a book club or a class or actually talking to people and building to something that looks like a more reciprocal relationship, that seems unattainable. The solutions that are supposed to address loneliness seem unreachable, and other solutions like therapy and fostering other sources of support may be expensive. And ultimately, a therapist isn't your friend. A therapist is a source of support, but is not always going to address the loneliness and could actually make us feel lonelier if we truly believed our therapist was the only game in town for us. And rarely do people who are in narcissistic relationships get out of all of them. So you are still trying to find time to cultivate these new relationships while still juggling the toxic dynamics of existing relationships. Sound bites and policy recommendations and numbered lists of takeaways, they're all well and good. But most of the time, they do not take account of narcissistic and unhealthy relationships, leaving any of you who has or are experiencing any of this, sometimes going deeper into the loneliness black hole. I'm going to be frank with y'all, I'm not sure I have any great ideas on this. We do know that having activities that are meaningful and purposeful can help stave off some of it. But by itself, it's not enough. I mean, at a minimum, this video is meant to, hopefully, may help you feel a little less crazy and help you see that a lot of hand-wringing stuff about loneliness and the associated solutions just don't take into account the toxic relationships that people find themselves in. This isn't just about social media and tech being a problem and not having town squares and a sense of community and being able to have stuff delivered to us so we don't go to the store. This is about the heartbreaking loneliness that comes from not being seen or heard or understood. And in fact, being told that you don't even know what you are feeling. And I can think of few things out there that are lonelier than that. So keep that in mind, that when loneliness is paraded out there as though joining your local book club or a line dancing class is going to be the answer, trust you me, if you are in a narcissistic relationship, you've got much, much bigger issues with loneliness, and one that a lot of the current solutions rarely address. Thanks again.